Tucker Carlson ripped into the administration's Iran policy on his podcast this week. He compared it to the lies that led to the Iraq War. He even warned we were about to repeat history. And then Tucker Carlson picked up the phone and called Donald Trump after apparently regretting some of what he said. I'm Kyle Becker and welcome to Explain America. Please like, comment, and share, especially for people who are very concerned about our possibility of going to war. So here's what happened. President Trump confirmed this week that Tucker Carlson called to apologize after going too far in his criticism of Trump's approach to Iran. Tucker, on his podcast, had accused the administration of letting neocon voices define the path forward. Quote, "We love Israel, we want to help, but we're not going to imperil American national security, the economy, America itself. That's immoral for us," unquote. Trump didn't really appreciate this. On Tuesday, he fired back, quote, "Somebody please explain to kooky Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon," unquote. Well, Tucker Carlson continued to press his foreign policy views in a debate with Senator Ted Cruz this week. Here's a brief clip that sums that debate up.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government. You're the one who don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that...
We're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
Israel.
Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
At a press conference, Trump told reporters, quote, "Tucker's a nice guy. He called and apologized the other day because he thought he said things that were a little bit too strong. And I appreciated that," unquote.
Tucker Carlson, Senator Ted Cruz interview. It seems like this issue on whether or not the United States should strike is kind of dividing a lot of your supporters.
No, my supporters are for me. My supporters are America first. They make America great again. My supporters don't want to see Iran have a nuclear weapon. Tucker's a nice guy. He called and apologized the other day because he thought he said things that were a little bit too strong, and I appreciated that. And Ted Cruz is a nice guy. I mean, he's been with me for a long time. I'd say once the race was over, he's been with me ever since, right? But very simple. If they think that it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, then they should oppose me, but nobody thinks it's okay. People that don't want, I don't want to fight either. I'm not looking to fight. But if it's a choice between fighting and them having a nuclear weapon, you have to do what you have to do. Maybe we won't have to fight. Don't forget, we haven't been fighting. We add a certain amount of genius to everything, but we haven't been fighting at all. Israel's done a very good job of that. But we'll see what happens. The bottom line is they can't have nuclear. And if I can't imagine that Ted Cruz said it's okay for Iran to have nuclear, including Tucker. I don't think Tucker says it's okay. The problem is then they get themselves into a thing. They don't want them to have nuclear, but then they say, well, we don't want to fight. Well, you're going to have to make a choice because it's possible that you're going to have to fight for them not to have nuclear. And it's interesting because I did ask Tucker, I said, well, are you okay with nuclear weapons being in the hands of Iran? And he sort of didn't like that. He didn't want to really, but he sort of didn't like that. And I said, well, if it's okay with you, then you and I do have a difference. But it's really not okay with him. Therefore, you may have to fight, and maybe it'll end, and maybe it'll end very quickly. But there's no way that you can allow, whether you have to fight or not, you can allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, because the entire world will blow up.
Tucker Carlson understandably has strong criticism about the United States interventionist policies in the Middle East. It has been backing Israel for some time, and Israel has been increasingly aggressive in going on the offensive after the extremely cataclysmic attack that Hamas carried out on Israel on October 7th. So even though we support Israel, it has been really trying to push this war against Hamas and Hezbollah and now Iran. And Netanyahu continues to spin things, understandably, from a diplomatic point of view, to try to get the United States more involved in this military action. And we are already supporting them militarily in a number of ways. Tucker Carlson is rightly concerned about the United States being dragged into a war in the Middle East. And one thing that seems to be missing in this entire debate, and something that Trump perhaps signaled to Tucker Carlson, of course this is speculation, is that Trump is using a tactic known as the madman approach, and that is where he's causing uncertainty as enemy in order to gain negotiating advantage and leverage against them. So you're trying to put your enemy in a position of making decision-making under conditions of uncertainty. And this tends to be to your benefit in terms of deterrence, in terms of causing fear and hesitation in the enemy, and this can accrue to your military and diplomatic advantage. So Trump's overblown rhetoric is intentional to me. His all caps threatening against Iran, although it's kind of characteristic hallmark of President Trump's communication style, is a diplomatic negotiation tool. And I think that the American public is rightly concerned about the U.S. being involved in another Middle Eastern war, considering our efforts in Afghanistan and in Iraq turned out to be disastrous. You know, the Taliban now runs Afghanistan for the most part, and Iraq, essentially when it devolved into a collapsed state, it spawned ISIS and other extremist groups, which subsequently moved into other territories such as Syria, and caused a whole host of problems for Israel and for other neighbors, even Jordan and the rest of the region. So the U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East has backfired drastically. If you go into a deeper dive of why the U.S. is involved in the Middle East, beyond the oil interest that the United States has there, obviously it's part of a grand strategy of America's enemies to get us bogged down in costly and ultimately demoralizing wars overseas, where we try to engage in regime change and nation building. But I don't think that's really at risk in Iran. I could be wrong. I really hope so, and I think the rest of America First movement does as well. I think that it is likely that we may drop some MOABs on nuclear facilities or give those bombs to Israel to do it. This is objectionable even to a lot of people in the America First movement, and I respect their opinion, but I think that Iran, being such a terrorist exporter of and simply a belligerent and cunning, ruthless regime that suppresses its own people, which is not, Iran is not Afghanistan, it's not Iraq. Up until 1979, they were a relatively civilized country with a proud history, which included art. They were at the center of trade in the Middle East for centuries, and they have a much different culture than some of the Arabic nations to their south. And I think that all this factors in. It's understandable that America First people believe this is not our business, it's not our war, but considering the risks to U.S. interests and international security, there is a debate to be had about whether the U.S. should have limited support for airstrikes on Iran that could destabilize the regime and give the Iranian people a chance to take their country back. We obviously do not need to be doing nation building. We don't need to be involved with boots on the ground there. I think that's pretty clear. But obviously the Pentagon is going to decide what it's going to decide. But we can debate it, and I respect your opinion. So please be sure to like, comment, and share with your own thoughts, and share them with your fellow Americans.